What's up, guys? How you doing? I have returned. I'm posting another video right now because of the background noise from my last video. I had my TV down a little bit, so I figured it wasn't gonna be that much of a bother. But still, I won't say it overlapped my voice, but I did hear. You can still hear it in the background. And it did kind of get in the way of me trying to listen to what I was trying to say. It's like trying to talk, but someone is talking over you at the same time, which is pretty much the same thing. But anyway, today, well, it's either today or tomorrow. I'm not sure. I don't even know what time it is right now. But anyway, oh yeah. So today, like I said, Wednesday, 1:30 a.m. on the 22nd, one day after my mother's birthday. And that's what I was doing yesterday. That's the reason why I made the video so late, because I was celebrating, my mom's birthday with her. And Monday I was trying to prepare for it, and I got her a present and everything. So I was just been real busy for the past 2 days. So that's the reason why I didn't post my video on Monday. So I was gonna do that today when I got home, which is what I did. But I'm gonna make another one to replace the one that I did earlier, since the background noise was getting in the way. I got a message from one of my commenters, and so to appease my viewers and all my fans, I'm gonna make another one of the same video. I'm gonna try and make sure that I get everything down that I talked about in my last video. Make sure it's just as close to what I said before as possible. So I got my notes. So anyway, to start with, this video is going to be about the similarities between two different stories. One of a story that was written and posted in a newspaper back in 1888, and the other one is a story about a man who disappeared in the same fashion in 1997. And like I said, there's going to be some similarities between the two, and how a story meets with real life, and how truthful this obvious story is to real fact. So obviously, this story had to come from something that was known as fact way back when. I'm not sure, but this story that I'm talking about is actually a three paragraph story set in 1873. It was written by a man named Ambrose Bierce, who was the author of several stories that he written. It was short stories, short creepy stories. He had one that was called Alone in Bad Company, Oxford University. It was printed in the Oxford University Press in 1999. But anyway, the story, like I said, is set in 1873. The man's name was James Worson. Okay, James Worson. He was a shoemaker who lived in Leamington Spa, Warwickshire, England. He undertook a bet while under the influence of a lot of liquor he was drinking at a bar that he went to, or a pub. That he could run nonstop from Leamington Spa to Coventry. It's Coventry, a distance of approximately 11 miles. He started to run, accompanied by the unnamed receiver of the bet, a liner draper named Barham Wise, and a photographer named Hammerson Burns, who followed him in a wagon. During the run, Worson stumbled and fell, he fell with a terrible cry and vanished before he hit the ground. He was never seen again. The witnesses were suspects at a time. Well, for a time. Okay, now this is a short story that he wrote back in 1888, and it was published in the in the San Francisco Examiner on October 14th, 1888. Okay, and it was included by Byers' collection. Can such things be? Now, in 1893, Byers himself mysteriously disappeared on October. Oh no, I'm sorry. I got that wrong. The collection, can such things be? It was added to that collection in 1893, and Byers himself mysteriously disappeared in October of 1913. Okay, now the story that he wrote, the title of that story was actually called "An Unfinished Race." It was collected in the third volume of Byers' complete works, which included the ghost stories from his earlier book, Can Such Things Be? The updated version included 3 new stories under the heading Mysterious Disappearances, including The Unfinished Race. Okay, so moving on to the story about 300 years later. Now, this story is about a man that I talked about in a previous video, probably last week, I believe. His name is Patrick. Oh, I'm sorry. His name is Patrick McNeil. Okay. Now, I'm not gonna go into the whole story because I already read it before on my last video. I'm just gonna go straight to the part where where the evidence in what happened to him is very similar to this story, which was written by this man, Ambrose Byers, in 1888. It says here, police later stated that someone outside the bar saw him staggering and fall and then disappear. This was the last confirmed sighting of Patrick. Okay, now, like I said, an unknown person outside the bar just happened to see him staggering down the street. He falls over, and as he is falling towards the ground, he vanishes without a trace at that point. Okay, he was found 52 to 57 days later, 17 miles away from his last known location, dead in a river in New York. Okay, which is where this all happened. This happened, well, not so much in, I'm gonna say New York. I think it was New York. Yeah, in New York. Okay, so the same thing happened to this young man in New York, of all places, 300 years later. So how is it that by this being a story, 300 years later, this man here, Patrick, disappeared in the same manner that Worson disappeared. The only difference is Worson was never found. This man right here, Patrick, was actually found in a river somewhere, 17 miles away, 52 to 57 days later, dead. And they said that he was burnt from his head down to his waist, 3rd-degree burns, and he had ligature marks around his neck. It was as if his collar from his shirt was like tightly wound around his neck, like as if someone was dragging him. And that might be what the ligature marks come from. They probably had grabbed him by the back of his shirt and was actually dragging him from a certain spot and then killed and dumped in the water. And I say that because even though there was no evidence of him being dragged, that was the crazy part. There was no evidence of him being dragged, or at least it wasn't released in the report. Or I don't know, maybe he just was never dragged. But he ended up with ligature marks around his neck, like as if his collar was real tight around his neck. But he wasn't being dragged, obviously, because they would have found drag marks that led in a straight line from where he was last seen to the river. And that was the only way he could have ended up where he went to, because from that point to the river is a straight shot. But you have to actually walk through walls of buildings and fences, all that, just to get to that river. Okay, now also he was found, I think they said, in his jeans, some shoes, and his boxers, I believe. They did list how the body was found. Okay, it says right here. Patrick was found wearing white socks, boxers, and button fly jeans, and nothing else. So boxers, socks, and jeans. That's it. Everything else was either burned off from whatever it is that burnt him to a third degree, or he wasn't wearing one at all. And which would explain why he had ligature marks around his neck. Like maybe somebody probably was trying to rip it off of him, or they were trying to pull it over his head, and when they was doing that, it was like this here. They were pulling it off like that, and they finally got over his head and he pulled it off. I'm not sure, but that seems to be what it could be. That's just an educated guess. I don't know, but if you pay attention to that story and this story and how similar it is, how can a story like that be just something that author like Ambrose Bierce made up? Most stories that you hear about in movies or see in books or read in books are based on actual factual stuff that may have gone on thousands of years ago, or accounts of people experiencing these things thousands of years ago, and it was recorded and passed down through generation to generation of human civilization, and it ended up in newspapers and stuff like that. But over time, people started to think that it was just a fairy tale, it was folklore, it was just a story someone made up. But I look at it like this here. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but a lot of these stories still come from some type of fact from another time before us. Okay, these creatures could have been roaming our planet before human civilization, or they just able to slip in and out of their own dimension to ours at will. I've heard of these kinds of stories. There was one story I mentioned a ways back about a farmer that was in his barn, and he was messing around with some tools, and heard all this commotion outside, like stampering and a lot of howling. He looks outside through a window, and he sees a coyote or wolf or some kind dart across his yard, and there was this upright, hairy-looking creature that looked like an upright dog running after it. Obviously, he was looking for food, and it found the food, and he was chasing after the food to eat it. So where could that creature have come from? Is it living in the forest just like Bigfoot? I don't know, because that is a level of creature that is known to us as just a fairy tale or a story that was made up by somebody about people turning into werewolves. Now, these creatures could actually be real werewolves, but not the kind where you go from being a human to a werewolf. Where you get bit on, anywhere on the body, and by the full moon you're a werewolf. Like The Werewolf in London, which was a very good movie. I liked it, and I love the way the detail of the transformation went down. They paid a lot of attention to it, and they tweaked it to the point where you almost thought it was real. That was some great animation. Now, and then there's also the movie about the very first werewolf movie, and I think it was called The Werewolf or something like that. And the movie was set in 1933 about a man who was bit by a wolf, and at every full moon he turned into this hairy-looking, upright guy with a lot of hair on his face, like a werewolf, basically. And the funny thing about that also, there is a condition where hair grows on your face. I mean, I'm talking about the full face and on your body, and you look like an actual werewolf. That is an actual condition in certain countries where people grow like that, and they grow it on their cheeks, because we all have hairs on our cheeks, and in places that we would never. We don't have it on our foreheads, or at least if we do, they're practically microscopic, because I can go like this and feel tiny, tiny little hairs on my forehead. But they're very prominent on your cheekbones and under your chin and everything, and around your face in this area, which is why they call it, of course, that's your beard. But and I do feel tiny little hairs that I can pull on my cheeks. So that's an overreacted symptom where the hair just grows rapidly onto the face. And they cut it a couple months later, the hair grows back. Okay, but like I said, these stories may have came from some sort of truth way back when. The problem with that is that everyone looks for proof in saying that these are real creatures. Okay, but to us, these real creatures are fairy tales, folkloric legends, what just anything you could think of. They're all made up, or it's a folkloric tale from way back when. Okay, now you got so many different things that are real, but to us they are fake. Starting off, like I said, with folkloric tales. You got your werewolves, you got your chupacabras, you got Dogman, you got Mothman, the Jersey Devil. All these creatures are looked at as folklore. Oh, and of course, the number one creature, Bigfoot. Okay, and then you got the skunk ape and all this stuff. You got the yowie in, Australia. Big ups to you too, Kimstar66. Anyway, yeah, so you got a lot of these creatures that everyone looks at as, fairy tales or folkloric creatures. Even Pan from the Avalon stories, which is half man and half goat. And he runs around playing a flute, like one of those little flutes that they look like a bunch of elongated tubes that go from small to big, and he plays it throughout his run through the forest or whatever the case may be. But anyway, then you got like I said before, what you see in movies, is normally based off of a true story. Okay, now let's take Steven Spielberg for instance. When he directed the movie, from back in the early '80s, Close Encounter of the Third Kind, he said in an interview that he talked to some government officials about aliens and UFOs and what they looked like and all that stuff, and probably talked to some authors that knew the truth about aliens, or some people who are part of MUFON. Okay, MUFON. I'm sorry. Part of MUFON, which is a UFO search group. Okay, so yeah, he's done a lot of research in the stories that he needed for his movies, and he's become a major success in that area. He's created tons of movies in the day. Is he still making movies? I don't know. I don't hear too much from him because normally he's being interviewed over something. He probably has, but I just don't follow him like that. Now also, okay, I talked about the Werewolf in England movie. Okay, and the upright dog. That's the thing about upright dogs. Oh, excuse me. These, like I said, these upright dogs are, obviously are able to slip in and out of our world through a portal or a wormhole that they can travel through at will. Maybe they come from a reality based world where wormholes are like second to none, like second nature. They probably pop up, or they're just there. You just walk through. I don't know, but that may be the case. Who knows? Now, like this story here, it doesn't mean that the story isn't true, because think about it. I read this story and I read that story about Patrick McNeil, and the similarities between the way they disappeared are spot on. They match too well. Okay, so obviously something like that may have happened, and he got the story from something that may have happened back in those days, and he wrote about it. Okay, so for a person to just say, "Oh, it's just a story," but the first thing they say is that he made it up. I'm not saying that that's not possible. I'm not gonna discredit any author or well-known author about their imagination and how they can turn their imagination into a huge book, deal. But at the same time, when you look at something like that and read something like that at the same time, you realize that the similarities between an actual disappearance and a story. Think about it, people. Obviously, some part of that story that he wrote was true. Maybe this man, James Worson, was a real dude from back in the 1800s. And he did disappear that way. And Ambrose heard about it, and he wrote about it in one of his short stories. I'm just saying. It could be possible. Right? All right. Now, moving on to Nikola Tesla. It's another man who was able to achieve certain feats in a way that no one else could ever fathom, like receiving images in his head. I mean, think about it. This man was able to put together an engine and take it apart, spin it around in a three-dimensional way, and put it back together. This man could do all this stuff in his head. You know, think he would have every part in his head, put it together in his head, take it apart, spin it around, like how Tony Stark did in the Iron Man movies, where he had those 3D imaging screens where he could grab the hologram and do all kinds of things, spin it around, grab it, throw it in the trash. It was weird. It was cool though. And so that's the way he thought in his head. He could think three-dimensionally and work an engine, putting it together piece by piece and taking it apart and looking at every single detail that way. You know, even Einstein was able to do things like, he called it brain. It was like some sort of brain exercises where he would think about how it would feel to be traveling on a beam of light in space. That was his train of thought and making his mind elevate to the level that it did before he died. Okay, strange but true. These are all documented accounts of, Albert Einstein. Now, as far as Nikola Tesla, he also was receiving messages from other worlds outside of our own atmosphere. Okay, the man said that numbers are the key to the universe. And 3 of those numbers are very important to the key of the universe: 3, 6, and 9. Now, for me personally, 3, 6, and 9 are lucky numbers for me. Okay? As well as the color red. Is it true? Maybe. But, I'm going to tell you something that is a weird fact. Every time I come home, without even realizing it, and I just happen to look down on the floor, there is a line of pennies in rows of 3. No matter what I do, no matter what happens, they always fall in rows of 3. Like, say if I got pennies in my pocket and I drag them out, I don't even realize it. A couple of months later, maybe even a year, I just happen to look down and bam, there's 3 rows. There's like 3 pennies in a straight line every single time. It may be in a form of a triangle, or maybe spaced out to where you see one here, you walk a couple steps, you see one there, you walk another couple steps, and you see another penny right there. But they're always in rows of 3. So that's a lucky number for me. And I've been seeing 3 throughout my entire life. I just didn't realize it until maybe maybe probably when I was a teenager, I started to see it, but I never really thought about it in any kind of way. I just thought it was really strange, and I didn't really pick up on it until like years after that. So, like I said, strange things happen. It don't mean it ain't real. And I'm gonna get to the other parts of that as far as I'm concerned. Before the video, before I end the video. Okay, now the whole brainwash deal. We have been brainwashed to believe that all of these stories about these like mythical creatures and Bigfoot are just that, mythical creatures, and they're not real. They're either mythical creatures, they're not real, or they're fabricated through fantasy and science fiction. Science fiction is a collection of stories that you can turn into a big story. It's like add a little craziness to it, like space, like space fights or whatever the case may be. That's science. That's science fiction. And we're brainwashed to believe that none of these things are real. Yet at the same time, when we have experiences, I'll be like, okay, maybe it is real. But a lot of people second guess themselves. They say, oh, I was hallucinating, or I was sleepy, or I was dreaming. You know how many times I did that and people say to me, you had to been dreaming. No, I was wide awake and standing up, and bam, he was right there. So, you know, I for one am not brainwashed because I did my homework on a lot of these things over the years. So I've been a big fan of the unknown since I was a teenager. My very first book was Communion, and which is a book about a true story about a man who I can't remember his name right now, but Whitley Strieber, that's his name. He wrote a book called Communion, which was about his accounts with aliens. In his he had like a vacation home, in upstate New York. Okay, and the book was a good book. I was still at that phase where I didn't really like to read, so I would read a little bit and I put it down. I try to keep reading it, but it just didn't work out. And that book is probably still being sold today. And it's got a big picture that covers almost the entire cover of the book of a gray alien with them big almond-shaped eyes. So like I said, fairy tales, fiction, no science fiction. It's all fact. Trust me. Okay. Just like the one thing I've noticed about the government or any other kind of situation dealing with this is that, like I said before, we are brainwashed to believe in only what they want you to believe. Like, they want you to know about human history and human evolution. Okay, like the caveman, the fact that we had dinosaurs roaming the earth before us. The Egyptians were able to build their pyramids without the help of aliens. They used slaves from the town to move all these huge boulders from one end of the desert to the other. Hundreds and hundreds of people. And that's how they were able to build their pyramids. I don't think so, because King Akhenaten was believed to have been an alien-human hybrid, which is the reason why he had a weird-shaped head and his cranium was humongous. Okay, they tried to say that it's some sort of disorder or like some kind of a bone disease that makes your skull elongate like that, which is a total crock of spook. I never believed that from the start, but like I said, they feel that he was an alien human hybrid, and I don't think he died here on Earth. I think he went for a ride, to another planet. Maybe, I'm not sure. I think that's what the story was about him. But like I said, never believe what the government tells you. Only believe what you know is true to you, inside here. Okay? Because I do. I believe in all that stuff. Okay? Now, about not seeing people disappear. With all these disappearances that happen in national parks, not one person has ever seen anyone vanish. Okay? But they will throw these beings or creatures, whatever you want to call them, they'll throw you a bone. Perfect example, the Henry McCabe case. I know I talk about him a lot, but he brings up a lot of questions of what's real and what you think is not real. Okay, if you listen to the voicemail he sent to his wife in California, you can hear a guttering growl in the background, and you can hear him moaning in pain. And then later on in the recording, you hear an unknown man, say, "Stop it," like as if he had control over this creature. I don't know. But think about this, folks. If you hear a growl, and there are experts all over the world that stated that there is no known animal we know of that can make that type of growl. You got your Bigfoots. Not Bigfoots, but you got your lions, you got your tigers, you got your mountain lions. Okay, all of these creatures, they growl. Okay, lions, tigers, bears, panthers, any type of cat or any type of creature like a bear, a grizzly bear, whatever, they growl too. But every single person that has tested that video or that recording stated that there is no known creature on this planet that can make that noise. Okay, yet this same creature had the ability to subdue his prey and kill it in a manner that leaves no evidence whatsoever. Okay? I mean, the proof is right there. It was on a recording. You know something was there. You know, what could have made that growling noise? It wasn't no dog. I know that. We all know how dogs sound. If you pay attention to the sounds that the animals of this planet make, and you hear something like that, you say, I have never heard that before. I never heard that kind of growl before, unless it was a werewolf of some kind. What else could it have been? The only thing is, whatever that creature was, it fed off of his energy or his life force, or maybe even his soul or spirit. One of those. It had to be either one or all. I don't know. Because all they found was a lifeless body floating in a river. Okay? Or it was laying on the ground near a body of water. Okay? I'm just saying. You know, they never mentioned the state of his body that it was in. They didn't mention the fact that his clothing was missing, as far as his pants and shoes and shirt. The only thing he might have had on was his underwear. But did they mention that? No. And the only reason why is because he was found dead in the same way that all these other people were found dead. They just don't want to talk about it because it's the weirdest thing, because this stuff is happening all the time. And they can't figure it out. They can't solve the case. So the families are being left in a fog because of that. They don't want to tell him anything because it's too weird and they don't want to touch it. So they just say, well, he's dead. All we got to do is just make up some asinine lie and then they'll believe it. So they do. They said accidental drowning. That's the excuse they give every time they come across a case like this that they can't never solve. And the fact that there was never any evidence to state that there was some type of foul play, but yet you hear him in pain. So whatever that creature was doing something to him. What? I don't know. He was able to do it without touching him. I know that. So he probably had that creature probably had some sort of mind power where they can mess with the vital organs or whatever, or somehow attack the brain mentally. I don't know, because the brain is connected to every single nerve in the body. So you attack the brain, you attack the body as well. You can't live without the mind. And I think that might have been what happened. He was suffering from so much trauma due to what this creature was doing to him, he just died and had no more energy to bring himself back. That's just out of the way guess. Okay. Let's see. I talked about that. Oh yeah, I talked about the Henry McCabe case. Okay. And I talked about the Bigfoot and the vocal recording. Oh yeah, and Elizabeth Morgan, one of my viewers, made a very, very astute comment about the government telling us the truth about what's going on this planet and what like the creatures that people see, but then they still get to them and say, well, it was just this, it was just that. She said that you think that they're gonna just that they're not gonna just tell the public that there are such creatures as Bigfoot and werewolves, are invisible creatures that can't be seen, but you can feel the energy from them, or you can feel the evil that they are promoting. Okay, they don't want to tell you that. They don't want to tell you that these creatures can slip in and out of our world through a wormhole or some type of vortex or a portal. Okay, they don't want to tell you that because that'll bring you too close to the truth. Why they don't want us to know the truth, I'll never know. But I always felt like if we're gonna live here, we got to know everything there is to know about our own planet. I mean, why aren't they telling us? Who knows? So, and then let me see. Now, it's like I said before, these beings cannot be caught. Okay, they're somewhat superior. Let's think about it. They throw you a bone so you can hear the fact that there are such creatures as who they are, but they won't leave you any evidence to figure out what these creatures are, like hair samples or prints from their feet or prints from their hands as they touch or kill the victim. This stuff has been going on for thousands of years, and no one has ever been able to figure it out. They haven't been able to catch whatever this is or nothing, because they're too elusive. They make themselves invisible, so that way nobody can see them, or you can't see them coming as they take you. Some of them are eaten alive. Some of them are found dead with no cause of death on or in the body, which is the strangest part about all these cases. Now let's take Jack the Ripper, for instance. We're talking about a man that went down in infamy as one of the biggest murderers on the planet because he was never caught. I mean, that's like the perfect crime. And knowing that there was no such thing as DNA science back then, anybody could have committed a murder, but they would have to do it in a way that it was like extremely stealthy, or the fact that Jack the Ripper was just too good at his craft. You know, the man's killed his victims with a scalpel. Okay, now somebody like that could have been caught a long time ago, but he always stayed in the shadows. He wore dark clothing, and at that time of the century, they were still using oil lamps. So the oil lamps could only cause but so much light on the street. So you walking around, you see this shadow coming towards the next thing you know, you wind up dead in an alley somewhere. And the only time that the cops show up is after the fact, because they didn't have cars back then. They had horse-drawn buggies, and that is probably what they were traveling on. But they wouldn't have gotten there in time because they were running on horsepower. A horse can travel at a very large rate of speed, but only if it's, you know, not tied up to a gurney or what you see. What you know, it doesn't. You know, anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, now it's like with me. I've heard ghosts in my house. Okay, there was one incident where I'm lying in bed, about to go to sleep. Just got off. It was like 10 something when I came home, or like a little after 10 o'clock, and I got in bed after I got on the computer for a while because I was just sleepy. I would say I'm not even sleep 5-10 minutes. And all of a sudden I hear 2 loud knuckle knocks at the foot of my bed, which was so strong and so hard and so loud that my mattress shook underneath my feet. That is just how powerful that those 2 knocks were. It was like knock, knock, you know. And I was like, wow. I jumped out of the bed so fast just to see what was in front of my bed, but it was nothing there because I was the only one in the house. Just like right now. Okay. Okay, now what we look at is sci-fi. Got all these stories, like, of course, Bigfoot, the Blair Witch, and any other movie that has a lot to do with folklore tales and creatures and stuff like that. They made movies about werewolves. They made movies about a lot of things. Okay, but you can't dismiss the fact that there is a such thing as these creatures. They just are able to slip in and out of our world at will. Or maybe they are under control of some advanced race of humans from the very distant future, and they open up these wormholes for them to feed. Which is the reason why Jared Atadero's skull was found 500 feet up in the Poudre Canyon. Okay, with his arm, with all his belongings and everything. And no one can figure it out. No one can figure out how is it that his remains ended up 500 feet up on in the Poudre Canyon. And the only thing his father found, Alan Atadero, was his sneakers, which were pristine. They looked like they just came off the showroom floor. His back, so I'm losing my train of thought here. I'm actually kind of tired and I gotta go to bed after this video. Okay, what was I was talking about Jerry Atadero's father. Okay, Alan Atadero, he was giving his son's belongings that they found in the woods 4 years later. All they found was the top of his little boy's cranium and a tooth that was sitting on top of a log. Now, what person, what human being do you know would take enough time to just place these items in a certain spot? I mean, I don't know of any human that could do something like that. You know, will take the time out to pull the tooth out of the kid's mouth and put it on a log. But everything else is missing. The skin, the bones, the muscles, the brain matter, all that stuff is gone. It's like someone picked up little Jared, placed him in their mouth, and just bit down on his forehead. And after that, the only thing that was left was the top of his skull with the skin and the hair up there, and whatever stuff is on the inside of the skull, which would be your blood and stuff like that, and possible brain matter. That bone, his skull cap, was wiped clean or licked clean. There was no evidence of DNA on it at all. No Bigfoots, no nothing. Okay, so I'm just saying, and when he held up his little boy's cranium like that, I was like, wow, that's crazy, because they had cuts all in. These were square cuts, so they can get at the DNA and determine that that was Jared's skull, and it was him. So, very sad story. Okay, last but not least, now I want to talk about something else too that has a lot to do with the mysterious and legendary stories, and this is about your own children who somehow feel like they need an imaginary friend. You hear that all the time with kids. They start talking to the air, but they giving this person that's not there food and drink and toys to play with. It's the weirdest thing. But at the same time, when parents, and if you're a parent, if you're listening, this is what you need to do. If you got a child that is, saying he or she has an imaginary friend, you gotta look at it in a different way. It's not an imaginary friend. I mean, it is, but it's not imaginary. It's a ghost. That's what it is. If you look at it that way, you can determine why your child is acting that way, because they have a ghost as a friend. And it sometimes 9 times out of 10 it's a child, another child, a ghost child, or it could be a grown person who just wanted to play with them, who probably liked kids when they were living. But yeah, that's my time on this video. It's like 43 minutes and 18 seconds. So I don't want it to be too long. Most of the videos are like 20 minutes, so I might have overstepped it. But what I'm talking about is true fact, and I hope you can get away from what we already know as fact and realize that the mysterious, the unknown, and all that other stuff dealing with these cases and this story right here, all that stuff is your fact. All that stuff is your evidence to tell you what exactly is going on. You just have to be able to believe it. It doesn't take evidence for you to realize that that's what it is. It just takes faith in realizing that there's a lot more going on this planet than we realize. And the government, the National Park Service, and the FBI is keeping all this stuff from us. I believe we should know, personally. But what Elizabeth Morgan said is very true. And there might be some people that may cause a huge panic or whatever, or I don't know what they would do, but still, there is some truth to that. But at the same time, I still think that we should know. But yeah, I gotta go. I'm getting sleepy. I gotta be out of here by 12 noon. Well, I gotta be at my job by 12 noon. So, aloha, mahalo, and hui ho. I really hope you enjoyed this video. There's no noise in the background. It's just me talking. So, I hope this really does it for you. And for Soldier, I think his name was Soulful Soldier, I believe. He was the one that made the comment. So this one's for you. Let me just make sure I get the name right here. Let me go back to the page. so that I know who it is. Okay, his name, oh yeah, Junglistic Soldier. So you said the background was killing it, so I made another video. Hope you like this one. I'm talking pretty much about the same thing, so you won't miss out on anything that I talked about. So big ups to you. Thanks for the info and the comment. Love you, man. Keep watching. Love you. Love all y'all. Peace and aloha.